the Russians, the regime, the government of President Putin allowing the opposition to take over in Kiev and move away from Russia's influence towards the EU?
I could not envision that at this point, no.
So what do you think the Russians would do to prevent that from happening? Other than they've been sending money, a lot of money into this government in Ukraine, but would they start sending troops in?
I don't want to get ahead of my skis right now, but I think that at this point the Russians are watching this very closely and they want to do everything they can to make sure that their people that they influence are in power.
Barbara Starr's at the Pentagon. I know their officials over there are watching it very closely, the military, the defense, the civilians there. What are you hearing, Barbara?
Well, Wolf, I think we should probably add in right away the intelligence community also watching this very closely. What they are going to have to calculate here is what is the news after this horrific situation. What is the new security and intelligence relationship, not just with Ukraine, but with this region of Eastern Europe and indeed with the Russians if they are sanctioning this? This looks, by all accounts, to be outright military strength type of activity against the civilians on the street, whether it's carried out by military forces, police forces, interior ministry forces. This is a level of firepower far beyond what is acceptable to the United States. I mean, we are at the point the U.S. Embassy told all Americans not to leave their homes tonight in Kiev. They knew something was coming, and this is what it is shaped up to be. This now means the U.S. has to calculate what kind of relationship it wants. Will it still interact with this government in Ukraine? How can it interact with them? And what message it sends to the other nations in the region. The U.S. historically has a very strong military, security, and economic relationship with the nations bordering the Black Sea and in this area, with many of them, at least in recent years. This could throw all of that into disarray. Wolf?
And we're just getting word right now. It's fascinating as we watch these fast-moving developments, Barbara, because Phil Black is joining us on the phone from Kiev. He's there on the streets reporting for us. Phil, we're just getting word that the Ukrainian opposition leader, Vitaly Klitschko, has arrived at President Viktor Yanukovych's office for talks. This according to the spokesperson for Vitaly Klitschko, the opposition leader. So explain what potentially this could mean, because that violence, the explosions we're hearing, they seem to be escalating, even though it's approaching, it's after midnight now in Kiev.
Just a few moments ago, Wolf, we saw what I can only describe as an escalation of violence. Russian security forces made a drive, or attempted drive, through some of the opposition lines here. We saw an armoured vehicle of some kind with a water cannon, surrounded by security forces with shields in full protective gear, trying to drive their way through the crowd, and it triggered enormous panic here. You had some of the thousands of people here fleeing in one direction, and then others running in the opposite direction to try and burn up their lines and their barricades and their defences against this attempted incursion, if you like, into Independence Square. It went on for a few minutes, placed the tear gas in the air, saw the water cannon. There's extensive use of flashbangs, stun grenades to further scare the crowd. But then those same security services withdrew, and they have now withdrawn behind the line of smoke and fire. But it certainly reinforces the feeling here that the intention of the security forces is to drive this crowd out tonight. That's what the people here feel. Fear is going to happen, Wolf.
Jim, hold on for a second, Phil, because Jim Sciutto, our national security correspondent, is here. The fire flames that we're seeing there, the streams going on, the explosions, this looks potentially very deadly.
They look like fireworks. I think it's important to talk about why this is happening. You know, we talk a lot about the pull between East and West, say in Asia or in the Middle East. Right now we're seeing it happen in Europe. This is home territory. You know, we imagine this battle ended in 1989 with the fall of the wall, but here you have, you know, this is Ukraine, a country split by this very question. Which sphere are they in? Are they in the Russian sphere or are they in the European sphere? And you're seeing that break literally into gunfire here.
And there are not just, you know, the country itself is very divided. It's not just that all Ukrainians want to move towards the West. This is a country in turmoil because there are Ukrainians that speak Russian, that have very strong ties to Russia. And that's why not only was President Yanukovych under a lot of pressure from the U.S. and the West to move towards Europe. But he was also under pressure from Russia and a lot of Ukrainians themselves to move closer to Russia. This is by no means President Yanukovych going against all the Ukrainians.
So there's an ethnic split, what you're suggesting, between Ukrainian nationalists, let's say, who may want to be closer to the European Union and the United States, as opposed to the ethnic Russians who live in Ukraine who want to be closer to Moscow.
Exactly, and that's why the U.S. and the Europeans have really pulled out all the stops to say your future lies with the West. Now, they could have used the power of the purse, I think, a little bit more effectively to say there's aid that could come with that. It's not just this partnership with Europe. You could have a better relationship. They made it about, we don't want to see you under Russia's iron fist. But the U.S. has really put all the stops to say, move towards the U.S. And you've heard Secretary Kerry say this is not a bidding war with Russia. It's very much a bidding war with Russia for the heart of Ukraine. And this country is by no means settled on that question.
The death toll seems to be increasing even as we speak. Eli, you cover the State Department, you cover the National Security Council. I assume they're meeting over there. They're watching all of these images coming in. The U.S. has a very significant embassy in Kiev right now, but there's deep concern for the safety not only of American diplomats, but of American citizens who may be there.
Well, I think that that's a major factor, and also just seeing these images on television will make it much harder for President Obama to compartmentalize those areas with Russia where the United States will be able to continue to cooperate, whether that's Iran or they open Syria. I think this will make it politically very difficult, particularly in Congress, to have the kind of reset that President Obama had hoped for in his first term. I think if there was a death of the reset, we're watching it on our screens right now.
Yeah, the death toll continues to mount even as we speak. Yeah. Joe Johns is over at the White House for us today. Joe, what are you hearing over there?
Well, Wolf, I have to preface this by saying this happened earlier today at the White House press briefing with Jay Carney. He said, among other things, that the administration was appalled by the violence, condemns the violence, and also said that excessive force on either side will not resolve the crisis. And he said the president, Yanukovych, should de-escalate immediately the situation and end the confrontation. Also said the administration urges him to restart a dialogue with opposition leaders to develop a consensus, and said the vice president has been having conversations with the president of Ukraine, but he didn't have an update on any of that. So that happened earlier today, and certainly not as we see these pictures unfold on television, but we'll be checking back with the administration for an update. It's very clear they are monitoring the situation very closely, Wolf.
Yeah, I'm sure.